Welcome back, folks. So every ad contains hundreds of thousands of creative data points, everything from text on screen to color, human presence to emotion, and so much more. So what if there was a way to measure the impact of these creative decisions in order to produce harder working, better performing ads? That is what our next speaker will be discussing. Before we get them up here, let's run another quick poll to get a sense of where you are on this topic. So you should all be seeing a poll question on your screens now. And that question is as follows. Which of the following would you rate as the strongest competitive advantage for marketers when it comes to evaluating ad performance? Is it a technology that measures the unique performance impact of every creative element within ads? Is it the scoring of brand and channel best practice? Is it a reliable A/B testing methodology? Or is it trust in our creative team's intuition and expertise? I'm sure most of you would like to say all of the above, but we're looking for the most important element to that question. Again, what do you rate as the strongest competitive advantage for marketers when it comes to evaluating ad performance? I'm going to leave that poll open just for a moment or two. Get your thoughts on that. Okay, producer Carl is telling me that most of you have voted now, so I'm going to be closing that poll in 3, 2, 1. Poll is now closed. Many thanks all. So to dig into those results in a bit more detail, as well as provide a little bit more context on the wider picture, let's meet our final speaker of the day. Here to outline the competitive advantage of creative data, how to mine for it, and what's possible when marketers know which creative decisions work when it comes to optimizing brand effectiveness. Please welcome the wonderful Katie Fagan, Director of Product Marketing over at creative intelligence platform Vidmob. Katie, lovely to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
No, great to see you. You're in a different location to the one I spoke to you earlier on.
Yes, you caught me earlier on my commute in, so I popped into a cafe really quick to be able to contribute to the morning session.
Yeah, I appreciate you making the effort. Many thanks for joining us. So I know you've got some slides that you're going to be walking us through. I'm going to hand over to you in just a moment. We're also going to take a quick look at those poll results if we can. I think those are going to be ready any second now. Carl, can you give me an ETA on those poll results? Okay, poll results are ready. There we go. That is what I call service. So which of the following would you rate as the strongest competitive advantage for marketers when it comes to evaluating ad performance? We've got 50% of you said this idea of a technology that can track ad performance. And then we've got a pretty even spread there, 24% each on the next two options. Let's maybe get some thoughts, Katie, from you on those poll results. How do those resonate with you? Is that what you would expect to see? Anything surprising there?
And nothing surprising, although admittedly, perhaps it was a bit of a leading question. But I think that what's interesting is that while the first choice was landing in that area of a technology solution to help understand the impact of creative decision making, the great news is that for anyone that didn't select that option, having that technology solution can also impact all of the above. So really, that all of the above answer was also the technology solution answer. So I'm looking forward to kind of digging into that a little bit in our discussion today to kind of elaborate on how creative data can be that solution for everyone to understand the impact of creative decision making, how that helps you score ads better, understand which ads are adhering to best practices and which ones aren't, develop better A/B testing methodologies, and build more trust in your creative teams.
Great stuff. Well, that feels to me like a seamless, perfect segue into your presentation. So why don't we get your slides up here and I can hand over to you. Folks, if you do have any questions for Katie, then please do let us know. We would love to get you up here to ask those yourself. So just drop Carl a message in the chat and we will bring you up as soon as possible. But for now, Katie, your slides should be there next to me. There they are. I'm going to hand over to you and I'll be back to facilitate some questions towards the end of the session. For now, the floor is yours.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Fagan, Director of Product Marketing at Vidmob, as Ben mentioned. And I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you all about this new competitive advantage in marketing, creative data. So let's kick things off. I want to just take a minute here and gut check the room to see how many of you resonate with what's on the slide here. I think if Ben's opening summit remarks are any indication of the change and challenges that we're all facing daily, I'd say it's safe to assume that we've all felt something along these lines. That we love what we do. We have a deep desire to do it well, to do it really well. And yet these days, everything feels a little bit harder than it has to be. And so I think, as marketers, we're all too familiar with this very dichotomy, because we're often the teams that are tasked with magic making, right? Being able to do more with less. And these days, especially, that's doing even more with even less. So here's a quick snapshot of what I mean, right? What's this look tangibly in our day-to-day? Being visible on more channels and telling more compelling stories, producing stunning on-brand, high-performing, personalized creative across multiple formats in multiple markets, capturing that ever-shrinking attention of higher quality leads, getting them to convert, proving that we're responsible for impacting that revenue. And of course, right, doing all of this and more with fewer signals thanks to privacy regulations, fewer resources thanks to shrinking budgets, incomplete data sets, cumbersome tech stacks, and an ever-present scarcity of truly expert talent. So yes, I think it's safe to say we've all felt this before, because getting the right message to the right person at the right time has always been a challenge, and now it's one with even more variables. So it's no wonder that the jobs we love so much, feel harder to do by the day. But humor me here as I take a U-turn. Isn't that the fun part of our job? Isn't that why we signed up, to figure out the next puzzle to solve, the next secret to unlock, what that new opportunity to get smarter and do better, to eke out even more advantage for our brands? I'd argue that's what we signed up for. So today I'd like to challenge that notion that as marketing gets more complex, that our jobs get harder. I'd like to challenge that because I'd like to question, is it really that marketing is getting harder, or are we just missing the right tools? Have we perhaps been evaluating our success with the wrong parameters? So I think, getting to answer some of those questions is one of the reasons why I'm really excited to share this time with you all today, to geek out a little bit on why, as marketers, we're actually, really well positioned to take on these challenges and turn them into some of the most exciting and innovative growth opportunities, not just for ourselves, but for our teams and our brands. Because when you're armed with the right resources and tools, it's far easier to transform any challenge into an opportunity, into that, problem to solve, secret to unlock, advantage to gain. And these are the opportunities that will help us become more innovative leaders, build more efficient and effective teams, and drive even more meaningful and measurable impact. So my hope today is that after this conversation, you'll walk away with an understanding of more than just an awareness of a new data set and a more efficient way of operating. Those things are important, of course, but I also, and more importantly, hope that you'll walk away with a new perspective on the challenge that we all face, or the challenges that we all face. Have a view into the advantage that we all stand to gain of what's possible, specifically, what's possible when it comes to measuring and defending the value of your team's creative and strategic contributions to your business. So let's really get started. Let's dig into this. I think, when we think about what makes the skill set of a marketer unique, more often than not, we reference this combined power of, right brain, left brain. And as marketers, we're really good at leveraging both sides of the brain to problem solve. We know every great idea has equal parts whimsy and logic. And in this way, we're really not that much different from scientists, because, like scientists, marketers are obsessed with cause and effect. If I do X, will it lead to Y? The variables might be quite different between a marketer and a scientist, but the fundamental question is always the same. Will said action produce desired reaction? So, for example, if I increase my spend on search, will it lead to more site visits? If I improve my keyword targeting, will I get more engaged visitors? If I provide gated free content that helps my visitor solve a pain point and nurture a relationship with my brand, will I get more MQLs, right? It goes on and on. We're all after that understanding with as much predictability as possible, which activities produce reliable outcomes. However, when it comes to creative analysis, I'd argue we've remained somewhat stunted in leveraging that superpower that is both sides of our brain working together. We almost completely leave the left brain or that data science side out of it. We lean on gut instinct. We make decisions backed by pretty old-fashioned ways of working that, frankly, can't keep up with the pace that digital marketing demands. So at best, we may run an A/B test to hone in on things like which CTA or color or keyword works best. But a single piece of creative is so much more nuanced than one decision over another. I mean, context matters just as much as the content. This, our right brain, intuitively knows all too well, because communication, even static communication, contains multiple moments of influence happening simultaneously to inspire, delight, encourage, and convey. Speaking of intuition, I'm sure that many of you are not surprised to see that of the three primary drivers of marketing performance, creative takes the cake for impact. I know I don't need this slide to tell you that weak creative results in weak sales lift, and that the opposite is true too. In fact, a recent Cumulus Perception study found that creative contributes to 47% of sales lift, second only to reach, which contributed just 22%. So we all intuitively know that creative matters, yet we skip out on applying that same, right brain approach of scientific rigor and validation that we typically bring to measuring the cause and effect of different, channel and audience placements to our actual creative. And it makes sense why. It's understandable. Historically, those are the two pieces of the pie that were the easiest and most accurate to measure. And when you can't change what you can't measure, it's no wonder that creative has been often overlooked. So, what if you could measure the impact that creative decision-making has on your performance in the same way you approach measuring the impact of channel or audience placement? How could you use those learnings to plan for future campaigns more efficiently, to allocate budget more effectively, to drive stronger and more meaningful results for your business? Oh, sorry there. I just realized there was a click through on the thing. Okay. Here we go. So this probably comes as no surprise, but now you can. There is a treasure trove of data that we've been sitting on for quite some time, and that lives in our creative. So every single piece of creative, every ad you've ever run, contains hundreds of thousands of data points. So from scenes to objects, human presence to emotion, text on screen to audio, logo identification, branding elements, color, activity, right? All of these creative decisions quickly start to form an incredibly rich and competitive data set known as creative data. And thanks to AI, we're now able to identify the presence of each individual element within an ad instantly, and then cross-reference the presence of those elements with performance results. That's when exciting things start to happen. Like being able to understand with greater certainty, which creative decisions are impacting the KPIs you need to deliver on, and understanding the nuances of that impact by channel, by placement, format, audience, objective, and so on. And so, yes, while this is a new data set, it's not just another data set. It's the missing and most influential piece to better understanding the impact of your overall marketing mix, to tell a more complete story about the influence of your team's contribution down to that level of creative decision-making. So this is a data set that can answer your most pressing creative questions, some of which you see on the slide here. Creative, after all, is the primary driver of just about every communication and marketing activity. So it's important to know which decisions you're making matter. And this matters because data can drive more efficient decision-making. It's how we learn faster and prioritize smarter. It's how we justify bigger budgets and additional resources. It's how we execute stronger. We don't only have to rely on intuition anymore to defend creative's role in our success. Instead, we can digest all of these creative points, creative data points and really make sense of them to validate our intuition and creative hunches and move forward and execute more quickly and efficiently. So this again brings the best of both worlds, both sides of our brain together to sort of transform what's possible in our marketing communications. And I want to be very clear, AI and creative data is not here to replace our human intuition. It's here to supercharge it, to bring the best of both worlds, right? Both sides of the brain, data and creativity together. Because when we're able to leverage AI to augment and accelerate the way we work, as you can see based on this quote here from a recent Forrester study, enormous strategically advantageous opportunities begin to emerge. So find me a CMO that wouldn't want a simpler way to understand and measure precisely what makes their brand differentiated, or how to uniquely delight their customers, or how to empower their teams and directly influence shareholder value from the data that has been hiding in their creative. And so that's exactly what Vidmob's platform has set out to do, is to be able to analyze digital ads in order to surface the data and insights that can improve performance. So quickly identify what's working, what's not, and why, so that we marketers can act on those insights to change and optimize ads at every step of the creative process. So you can get insights on messaging, video length, logo, text placement on screen, featured packaging versus products, emotions, and more. This, all of this creative data then compared to, again, those KPIs like clicks, purchases, view throughs, et cetera, help your team act on these insights in a meaningful way. So you can, with Vidmob, you can leverage our global network of creative talent to help produce those ads using our workflow and collaboration tools. You can bring your own teams on the platform to collaborate more efficiently, leveraging these insights. Or you can use automation to help bring a single idea and automate it across different placements. And so we call this process of bringing data into the creative production workflow intelligent creative. And our platform, makes that possible throughout every step of that process, from insight to action to optimization. So you're always learning, getting better at what works and why. So let's see that in action. We'll share an example of how one of our clients was able to leverage the creative data at their disposal to help validate a creative hunch. So with the holidays fast approaching now that we're into November, we thought this example of how a major beauty brand navigated the sort of change and uncertainty of the pandemic's peak, was a particularly poignant one for this conversation. So as you can imagine, this brand, with their large portfolio of products, has a lot of nuance to manage in order to effectively hit the right audience with the right product, with the right message at the right time on the right platform, yada, yada, yada. So their goal was to make sure that they created an experience on YouTube that felt personalized, intentional, and of course captured both attention but generated action. They were really focused on how they could impact their ROAS. So when faced with this uncertain buyer behavior that the pandemic was driving during the height of the pandemic in the holiday season, the beauty brand debated if they should abandon their traditional tried and true messaging of gift giving to others in favor of a new trend that platform partners were predicting in self-gifting. So let's take a minute here to kind of collectively put ourselves in the shoes of this marketing team. So faced with this uncertainty and fair share of risk, right? Weighing the decision of whether or not to abandon tried and true messaging in favor of, a potential trend. As we know, with trends, one size does not always fit all. So let's just for a second imagine what that conversation might look like within your own organization. Imagine what you would need in order to defend that decision-making. Naturally, data helps drive those decisions and support and defend the direction that would ultimately be taken. So let's look to how this major beauty brand, approached data-driven decision-making for their creative in this scenario. So to test self-gifting versus tried and true traditional gifting messages, the beauty brand obviously needed to develop an asset that included that self-gifting message, so that they could test it against traditional messaging to discover if this was a trend that was worth pursuing. So the brand turned first to our creative network of experts who are trained in platform best practices on YouTube and other major digital channels to develop 2 messaging variations. Again, one for self-giving, one for the traditional gift-giving message. And they did this using assets they already had, like stills, logos, etc., so they could get in market quickly to get the results that they needed to validate whether or not this trend was worth pursuing. And here's what the creative data revealed. So not only was the self-gifting message dramatically more successful at driving higher ROAS, but so was adhering to YouTube best practices, such as having your brand in the first 5 seconds or including a visual CTA. That was also more effective at driving ROAS than against the brand's traditional benchmark, almost over 50% more effective, in fact. So I think what's interesting here is that, yes, while this does follow that A/B testing, methodology, one message versus another, and I know I kind of poo-pooed that earlier by saying that only picks up a certain piece of the puzzle. What's possible when you do these type of analyses using creative data and using AI to pull that creative data out of the test is that you can analyze multiple creative decisions at one time. So this beauty brand was able to validate both that the risk was worth taking in terms of changing their messaging, as well as understand which best practices were most effective on YouTube for driving the ROAS impact they were looking for. And so this really is the power of being able to isolate the unique impact of specific creative elements, such as messaging and best practices, to more quickly arrive at conclusions for how to leverage creative decision-making to drive the most effective results. So again, for this beauty brand, that was a whopping 72% lift in ROAS. And when they were able to uncover that most effective message using the most effective best practices, they were actually able to drive success across all of their messaging. And so I think that, if we were to go back to that imaginary conversation from earlier, how would you see that conversation going differently if you were armed with this type of data? What kind of an advantage would that bring to your teams in the room having that conversation? What kind of an advantage would that drive for your brand when you're out in market with this sort of data-tested, data-validated messaging? So by now, I hope it's easy to see how impactful having that full visibility into the entire pie of performance levers, you can be. How being able to bring that level of scientific predictability to better understanding what's driving creative success, aka that data to defend our creative intuition or validate creative hunches, can be your marketing team's creative armor and secret weapon to bring you back to the fun part of your jobs and see your most sort of pressing creative challenges as the opportunities for advantage that they really are. I hope that creative data can be your great unlock to defining and defending that unique competitive advantage, as well as one that defends your creative decision-making, empowers your teams to do their best work, and completely demonstrates the value that marketing delivers to the overall business. So yes, thank you for your time today. Thanks for listening in. I look forward to hearing from you in the Q&A. And if you'd like to chat further, my email is listed, and I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Yeah, great stuff. Katie, many thanks for walking us through the journey. Some fascinating insights in there. Folks, if you do have any questions for Katie, then please do let us know. We've got a couple of minutes left for chat, so please get your questions in as quickly as possible and we'll bring you up. Katie, just while we're waiting for our audience there, a quick question for me. You mentioned this idea that every piece of creative has thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of different data points attached to it. Where do we get started on this journey towards making sense of all that data?
Yeah, that is a fair question. Really, there are a few ways that you can get started specifically with Vidmob. So obviously, if you've been running ads on any of the major social platforms like Facebook, YouTube, Pinterest, LinkedIn, etc., we can do a historical look back analysis and understand sort of what has worked traditionally for your brand and what has not. But let's say you haven't. Let's say you're brand new to participating on any of these channels, theoretically. We could also use creative data, leverage through our creative scoring product to understand ads before they go live, which ones are or are not hitting those best practices. So it's really like there's a way to start small and grow and become more sophisticated, all while leveraging creative data throughout the process.
Yeah, great. And so at which point should we start using this creative data? At which point during the campaign? Is it ideation? Is it when you're refining the product? Is it when you're kind of sending it out for testing? At which point should we bring it in?
So, I mean, theoretically, you could bring it in whenever. I think let's say you have a campaign that's live at the moment, you come onto Vidmob and you're taking a look at what's working and what's not. And let's say you see a campaign is really underperforming. Our analytics will be able to help pull out which pieces or help identify which pieces are potentially contributing to that underperformance so that you can pull it out of market, optimize it using insights from, again, that like historical look back, for example, of what's worked for you historically, or compare to what's been working across your industry or across the platform. We do have normative data as well, to be able to then use that to form a more complete picture of how to optimize effectively in flight. Or, you could use it to inform a campaign before, while you're in the planning process to determine, based on your objectives, where you want to run the ads, et cetera, how, which insights you can access to make sort of more concrete and effective decisions.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. A question from me. What do you see? What's the kind of reaction of the creative teams to the application of this kind of scientific rigor, if you like, to the creative process? But how are you seeing them respond?
You know what? Admittedly, I think creatives can be a little bit hesitant to that approach initially on, but I think once the aperture of what's possible becomes clear, we have seen a lot of creatives get really excited about this type of data set because again, if you want to imagine that conversation of the tried and true versus this trend, any creative that has a hunch or an idea of what could work now has this entire data set to back them up, right? So I think this is the first time that creatives actually have a data set that they can use in a way to justify and validate, why they're making the decisions that they are, and to what advantage, to what end, right?
Yeah, thanks, Katie. We spoke a little bit in that last session about the shift away from third-party cookies, and it feels it's relevant to this session as well. How are you approaching this? How are you tackling that shift, and what does the future hold?
Yeah, so I mean, with the elimination of cookies and other sort of third-party data, it obviously becomes harder to get that right message in front of the right audience. With this creative data set, again, it's sort of it's giving more visibility into the full picture and helping understand how to craft a message based on your desired audience, based on, your desired placement format. There's all of these ways that our platform can tie the impact of a specific creative decision to outcomes across those different lenses. And so I think by having access to this data, you have another way to sort of proof point, validate, and shore up the decisions that you're making in order to be more effective as sort of this other data set is going away. So it's really, we see it as being maybe not obviously a one-to-one replacement, but very additive in terms of being able to give marketers more of that insight into what matters, creatively speaking, for their brands and the goals that they're trying to achieve.